envision the scariest place. Maybe it's a dungeon or a place with rats, a falling down mansion. But that's so old-fashioned. Nowadays, everyone on the internet is afraid of something much more mundane. This. For the past 5 years, this photo has been making the rounds and taking the place of the traditional horror scenery. Instead of darkness and bats, it's overly lit wall-to-wall carpeting and possibly bats. It's hard to know what's happening up there. This initial photo has been transformed into many different artistic mediums. And like all pieces of art, the reason we found it is good fortune. Oh, sorry, I misread that. 4chan. In 2019, a thread was started with this photo and the request, post disquieting images that just feel off. The responses were, to me, underwhelming. A blurry photo of a farmhouse on a hill? Beautiful. A cello in a room? Someone practicing music? Oh God, the disquieting horror. But in those mediocre responses to this image, someone put their fingers to keyboard and wrote the description that would sum up the original image and give it its name and origin story. If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. That sounds like the intro to a very compelling episode of The Twilight Zone. But this was happening in 2019, so instead of a 30-minute episode written by a writer's room, you get hundreds of little projects developed by tons of creative people all over the internet. Which is why right now I could watch a short film on YouTube with 63 million views, or play a free walking simulator where we try to leave the backrooms, or I could scream on a Roblox game with people half my age, a third my age, a quarter my age. Or I could read the months of research people have gathered on where this photo was taken. That location will be revealed momentarily, but first I think it's important that we actually look at this picture. What are we seeing in this photo? Why does it feel off? Well, first off, the photo is a little crooked. I think if we tilted it a little to the right, it would remove that you're seasick on a cruise feeling. The room is also very lit, and not in a lit way. The 4 fluorescent lights make the place look both bright and dark at the same time. Very yellow, and like there is not one window in the entire place. And then the last thing that took me a while to notice is this room has 7 different wallpapers. The one on the left is polka dots, the one on the right has chevron arrows pointing up. It's not clear enough to see all the wallpapers in the opening, but they are all clearly different patterns. No wonder this place looks uneasy. It's like an unfinished Sims build that the tragic clown is visiting. Then there's the outlet receptacle. Actually, that looks good. I'm happy to know that I can charge my laptop on a grounded outlet while I'm trapped in a liminal space. So now we know what we're looking at, but where is it? This photo didn't no-clip into the internet from the backrooms in 2019. It was taken at this building in 2002 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It was in a former furniture store in the same city where these overalls were made for adult men until everyone mutually agreed they would look better on babies. Now, I'm not the only person to see this photo and say, I want to learn more. That research I mentioned, it's good. I don't think I've ever picked up a subject that has been this passionately investigated. There is a Google document by Ella Jameson where you can scroll through every article ever archived on this address. They have blueprints of every renovation that happened to this building. They know that Laura was selling drapes there in 1978, and that before it was a furniture store, it was a department store, and the owner died less than a year after closing the business. But for the longest time, people didn't know where these photos were taken. These were taken and posted in a time long before reverse image search. And by the time that technology existed and everyone suddenly cared about these weird liminal space photos reposted in 2019, the website that the photos were posted on were long gone. So 2 histories existed for the place in this image. The real renovation story in Oshkosh and a fictional story of a nightmare location on discussion boards and discords. But there are things that the 2 have in common. The scary backroom story evolved from this idea of being caught in a maze. You wouldn't be able to tell if you'd been in that room before because it all looked exactly the same. You could be stuck in an endless loop. And it turns out the real place also involves an endless loop. These RC cars drive around the same room where the original backrooms photos were taken. The whole reason these photos exist is because this guy bought this building to create a space dedicated to remote control car racing with a more permanent location. It became a franchise location of Hobbytown, the hobby collectible and toy store. Documenting the process to people in the local RC community in 2004, they posted the new Revolution Raceway. The post has been rediscovered by the Wayback Machine. It was explaining what was happening with the renovations of an old building at 807 Oregon Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. They were including photos and asking for help from their community. This was a former furniture store with plenty of partitions and fake inner walls. It also needs serious upgrades of insulation, lighting, and facilities. We have a very tight budget. Volunteers are needed for another couple of weekends or nights to whip this into shape. I had to look over these images countless times and read the blog post over and over again to finally understand where we were. This room was once this room. Above is the original view of the East Oval Room. Notice no windows are visible. You cannot see in the pictures the extent of water damage, but it was there, requiring all this material to come out. He calls it the Oval Room not because of its shape, but because of the oval racetrack that is now there. And in an earlier blog post, he shows the same East Upstairs room now featuring windows. The front room of the upstairs, 65 foot wide by 80 foot long, it needs the carpets to be torn up, underlayment put down, and the ceiling replaced. It may look a little rough now. After 2 days of tear out by Bob and his crew, this looks good to me. But it will come around. The windows are a welcome treat, but need storms. Anyone? So that's what that carpet would look like under natural light. Interesting. Which does make you wonder, why would you cover up perfectly good windows? Uh-oh, are we about to learn something about the 70s? You can see that the second floor had windows in an ad from 1968. So what changed? Well, luckily, someone pulled every blueprint. In April of 1977, this blueprint was submitted for a new design on Rohner's furniture store. It includes connecting the building next door, updates to the bathrooms, changes to the staircase, and most excitingly, a new facade. And that new facade included covering up all the second floor front windows. Later that year in October, they are throwing a celebration sale, Rohner's 20th anniversary expansion sale. In it, they show an illustration of that new entryway, and in the copy, they mention 2 large floors of display area and show off photos of the new second floor. Now, it's hard to find a non-illustration, an actual photo of this front facade right after the renovations were done. But in 1988, the Train hobby shop across the street burned down, and this photograph of the damage also gives us a very clear view of Rohner's facade with no second floor windows. Now, we still haven't answered the why. Why would you cover up those second floor windows? You could still make these upstairs rooms display areas. It doesn't feel like covering up the windows, adding drop ceilings and artificial light were completely necessary. Now, I wasn't there, but I do have an idea of why this approach was picked. When I look at that picture of the storefront, it reminds me of a Kmart. To me, it looks like they were covering up the brick and the windows to no longer feel like a Main Street business, and switching to that light tan with big block letters to imitate the big box stores you would find in any suburban shopping center. With the popularization and reliance on cars, Rohners might have been intimidated by the Walmarts, the Barnes & Nobles, the Kmarts, the furniture stores that have more space and room in these shopping centers. They wanted to look like they were fitting into the shopping habits of their customers who were enjoying the convenience of big box stores in big boxy buildings. And if I think the redesign had to do with the time period, you better believe the drop ceilings did too. When I first saw the photos of the gutted back room, one thing that threw me off was the ceiling height. The gutted room looks so much taller, and that's because it is. You can see the white where the wall was before, and the brownish color would have been covered up by the drop ceiling. Drop ceilings are usually on these metal suspension grids that hold the whole ceiling up at one height. And there are a lot of benefits to them. You can have electrical, plumbing, mechanical elements hidden away in a lofted space that is still easy to access, since all it takes to remove a drop ceiling panel is push it up. But the other thing that made drop ceilings so popular in the 70s was the increase in oil prices. And this renovation was right in between 2 big ones in 1973 and 1979. The lower ceiling can reduce heating costs, and in a big old building like this, I bet that was very enticing. If you have a drop ceiling in your house or your apartment and you're wondering when it was added, there's a pretty good chance that it happened right in this period. Sometimes when I look at these big design trends, it feels like an ocean that just could not be controlled. A big style wave comes and suddenly the carpets are beige, You have a drop ceiling and all the windows have been covered up. But there are often people who are fighting against these styles even at the time. Of course, some people listen, but the majority just ask 30 years later, why would someone cover up such a beautiful hardwood floor? This book, A Pattern Language, was published the same year that these renovations happened. And when you read it, you realize that they might have been able to predict the exact language you would read in the short stories written about the Backrooms. The book gives notes and strongly held opinions on how to properly lay out towns and buildings. About the fluorescent lights we see in that original photo, they refer to them as an egg crate ceiling and say it destroys the social nature of space and makes people feel disoriented and unbounded. And of a room without a window, they say rooms without a view are prisons for the people who have to stay in them. And on that same principle, a building is most often thought of as something which turns inward, towards its rooms. People do not often think of a building as something which must also be oriented towards the outside. Below this one, there's a photo of a large square building, which is labeled, "The edge cannot support any life." Does that not read like an end screen after you die in one of those Backrooms games? But the line that most perfectly encapsulates this entire issue is this one. In many modern building complexes, the problem of disorientation is acute. People have no idea where they are, and they experience a considerable mental stress as a result. That's pretty much it. When you look at that original description of the Backrooms, that's what made this photo and this concept go viral. Approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. The idea that you are disoriented because everything is the same. You have no idea where you are, where to go, or where to turn. But this photo and the whole premise would have you thinking that this entire furniture store looked like this, that there were hundreds of square miles of this ugly room. But earlier this year, Bob Mazza, the owner of Bob's Hobby Shop, put every photo on that original camera into the public domain. This was part of a fundraiser to try and fix the roof of this 100-year-old building. Him releasing those photos means we can see this whole building through its 2000s renovation progress. And in these 110 images, you get a better idea of what this place looked like. You've got upstairs rooms with wall dividers and different wallpapers and carpets, probably to show off different furniture in different layouts. And then there's this photo in the basement of a fuse box and a boiler. And that's when this whole thing started to look pretty familiar. If you've ever looked through the camera roll of someone who's a contractor or works in the trades, I think you could find a lot more photos that feel like the Backrooms. This is kind of what a work in progress looks like. A place that wasn't a furniture store anymore, and it wasn't an RC racetrack yet. It looks liminal because it is liminal. It's the transition from one store to another, and the in-between looks weird because it is. I decided to cover this because on a past video, I asked what is the modern day equivalent of a Victorian house? Victorian houses are buildings that you just keep always seeing in the past 100 years of horror media. And I got this comment. Probably the horror houses of the moment are the famous Liminal Spaces photos that circulate around, which is weirdly the opposite of Victorians. They're bland, contextless, interchangeable, poorly designed, and mass-produced. I think they're onto something. This liminal space photo is not just scary because they blocked off the windows and added drop ceilings. To a younger generation, it's scary because it's old. Just like a Victorian house became a symbol of horror media because it looked old and run down and out of style, the same thing might be happening here. It's just strange when you grow up in a period of time that is now getting that treatment. In an exciting way, a new generation is creating what they find scary. Kane Parsons, who made that extremely popular web series, The Backrooms, at 17 years old, he'll now be directing an A24 film. And that's where this whole topic gets a little more complicated. This entire project so far has been an internet adventure, and it hasn't felt like it was about profit so far. That walking simulator game I mentioned, the complex found footage, it's completely free to play. So far, The Backrooms has felt kind of like this group project that everyone on a specific part of the internet has been enjoying. Earlier this year, when Bob posted the rest of the images from the renovation, he put them in the public domain, which means people are free to use them however they wish. And I think that was an extremely generous act. It feels like the type of decision that recognizes what it means to be a part of the internet And it's a very idealized version of the internet, where information and ideas are freely shared, and as they're exchanged between people, they evolve. It doesn't belong to just one person, it belongs to a community. But the community Bob was originally trying to help was his very local RC racing community. When he posted on the GoFundMe, he included this letter he had found with the CD of photos, which was written by his friend. This collection of pictures is not inclusive of all the phases in the construction of the new Revolution Raceway and Hobbytown in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It is, for the most part, a summary of the project from its beginning on the first walkthrough to the stage where it is at today, May 22nd, 2004. Robert, most of these photos were taken by me, not as a part of a job, but done so to document for you the progress and changes for you to remember them. Thank you for your effort in creating this dream for those who share it. On behalf of our fellow racers and patrons, we all thank you from our hearts. Hopefully you view these pictures in a few months and then in a few years and look back and confirm it is the house built by many, and smile that your friends did this for you and ourselves to share with the next generation. Thanks alone do not quite do it justice, but we, and I especially, really mean it. Bill, HVF Racing Team. This old letter was published on the GoFundMe page posted on August 2024. It turns out that original fictitious Backrooms description mentioning moist carpets, they might have been onto something. Water damage was why everything was originally removed from the Backrooms, and today they need to replace the roof and repair brickwork that has been damaged. In older interviews, Bob seemed pretty reticent to own the Backrooms identity. It seemed like that wasn't what this place was about to him. To him, it's Bob's hobby shop. But in this GoFundMe, he offers it all up. If he reaches his original goal, he would host Backrooms events, temporarily recreate the original room, sell the camera these photos were taken on. It would be cool if he was doing this all because he just loved the internet so much. But it's pretty clear from reading his request that he's doing it because he loves this hobby shop and racetrack. And he's hoping this is a way he can save it for the future. Bob's GoFundMe goal has not been reached. He raised $12,000 in these past 6 months, and he brought the goal down from $120,000 to $78,000. The Backrooms have gone so far beyond those original images, and it's beginning a new phase where it's leaving the internet. Real production deals, real money is being exchanged based on a story people dreamed up from these photos. And there will be profit being made. I mean, I am profiting off these images too. Which is why I'll be donating 15% of however much this video makes through YouTube AdSense this year to Bob's Hobby Shop GoFundMe. I will tell you all, that amount will certainly not be enough to get this roof repaired, but I hope it helps. And I think if you're suddenly thrust into the public eye for a renovation you made 20 years ago, which will now be turned into movies and merch and who knows what else, I sure hope you can at least get your roof repaired. Thank you all for watching this video. If you like architecture and history, please subscribe. If you like this video, you might enjoy the video that inspired it on mansard roofs. I also did a video on lighting, which also quotes a pattern language. I'll be playing some Backrooms games on Patreon this month, so if you like that type of thing, I'll see you there. Thank you all. Bye.